Let's do this. Turn left. Keep left, and then turn left. Turn left. Get ready to turn right. Turn right. You have arrived at your destination. Your route guidance is now finished. Time to hit the road. Drive safe. Turn right. At the roundabout, take the third exit. Exit now.
recent bust has been...
Live from NPR News in Washington.
And Russia obviously have each about 5,000 warheads, but the majority of those are not deployed. So they are either in reserve or they're stocked for possible demolition. So the US and Russia have an agreement that expires in February next year, a new start, that limits the number of these warheads. And so once that expires, if that expires, then the US will be free to ramp up its own production, and obviously it's a very costly endeavor.
Yeah. A few weeks ago, President Trump was asked whether the U.S. would begin testing nuclear weapons again, and here's what he said.
We have more nuclear weapons than anybody. We don't do testing. We've halted it many years ago. But with others doing testing, I think it's appropriate that we do also.
Yaroslav Trofimov, based on your reporting and analysis, is it true, as the president said, that the U.S. has more nuclear weapons than anybody?
Well, actually, Russia has more nuclear weapons than the U.S. The numbers from the Federation of American Scientists, obviously the exact numbers are not necessarily public. But what is interesting is that U.S. intelligence agencies for years have been claiming that both Russia and China are actually engaged in a certain degree of testing. And we'll have to figure out what nuclear testing actually means. Testing doesn't necessarily mean blowing up a nuclear device with a mushroom cloud.
Right, and Trump hasn't defined what he means by that.
Exactly.
Some of the anxiety around nuclear weapons is showing up in pop culture. I'm thinking about this new Netflix film, House of Dynamite. Since you cover this, how much loss of sleep does this cause you, Vinny?
Well, we'll all dive in there, of course, but
not that way, hopefully.
Yes, hopefully not that way. I think the basic premise of mutually assured destruction is still there. That's what kept peace since nuclear weapons first emerged. And we now have 9 countries in the world with nuclear weapons. So I think for now, the taboo on actually using nuclear weapons
Get ready
holds.
to turn left.
It's hard to predict the future, but so far, governments, even the most irresponsible ones, like North Korea or like the Soviet Union during some periods under Khrushchev, at the end of the day, acted responsibly.
Let's end on that semi-hopeful note. That is Yaroslav Trofimov, the Wall Street Journal's chief foreign affairs correspondent. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is NPR News.
There is this pack of lesbians, and they're trying to form a neighborhood, an intentional neighborhood called Woman Town. I thought, what? Yeah! Join us for more true stories told live. Friendly neighbors, midnight movies, and nun surveillance. Stories of belonging. That's on the Moth Radio Hour from PRX.
Tonight at 9 on WNYC.
Whether it's news from around the world or the latest from your neighborhood, New Yorkers turn to WNYC for the information and connection they can only get from All Things Considered. Be part of that conversation through your business's support of WNYC. Learn more at sponsorship.wnyc.org.
It's All Things Considered on WNYC. I'm Luke Green. New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani says he told President Trump that there is no need for a federal troop deployment in the city. Speaking on NBC's Meet the Press, Mamdani said that the city is well equipped to keep New Yorkers safe.
What I told him is that what separates New York City from anywhere else in the country is we have the NYPD. And I trust the NYPD to deliver public safety. And to me, that is something that I know that they can do, that they have done, and will continue to do.
President Trump said on Saturday that he would send the National Guard to the city if he felt it was needed, but other places needed more right now. The administration has already sent the National Guard to Los Angeles, Chicago, and Memphis. Mamdani says the NYPD will continue to be led by Commissioner Jessica Tisch after he takes office in January. Record numbers of people are expected to travel this Thanksgiving week, and that means heavier traffic on area roads and bridges, as well as on the way to local airports. The Port Authority says it's combating congestion by suspending all ongoing repairs and construction projects at its bridges and tunnels from 5 a.m. Wednesday to 5 a.m. on Monday, December 1st. WNYC, All Things Considered continues.
Support for NPR comes from member stations and from Legacy Box, committed to helping preserve moments that matter this holiday season by digitizing videos and photos, then storing them in the cloud so they can be gifted for generations to come. LegacyBox.com and Luminescence Foundation. Luminescence Foundation is dedicated to shedding light on neurological research focused on Alzheimer's and Parkinson's diseases and supporting land conservation initiatives.
If you believe democracy requires a free press, your station actually my favorite part of the Rushmore story because the initial idea for Mount Rushmore came from a state historian named Doane Robinson, who was very concerned about the state's economy in the 1920s. Basically, after World War I,
Go straight
the South
on.
Dakota agricultural commodities markets crashed, and the state historian was looking for a way to diversify the state's economy. And so he landed on this idea of tourism, attracting car tourists that were driving around the Midwest to come to the Black Hills of South Dakota
Go straight
for a
on.
tourist attraction. And that tourist attraction was what he wanted to sculpt into the Black Hills. His idea was to have figures of the American West, like the great Colonial Red Cloud, Sacagawea, Lewis and Clark, Custer, be carved into the pinnacles of the Black Hills to attract tourism to that part of South Dakota.
And the vision of what should be carved into that mountain changed over time. So how did we end up from his vision, the
Right.
state historian's
And
vision,
then continue
to
straight
4
on.
U.S. presidents being in that car?
When Doane Robinson hired Gunther Borglum to do the sculpture, that's when the vision began to change. Gunther Borglum wanted to
Go straight
create
on.
a memorial to American empire, to American exceptionalism. He had the idea of carving 4 presidents into Mount Rushmore. And those 4 presidents, of course, are George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt. And each represented a certain segment of that idea of American empire.
And it took more than a decade to carve those faces in the mountain. I think 1927 to 1941. Why so long?
Well, there were a lot of reasons. I mean, one of them at the beginning especially was funding. There were fits and starts in terms of how much money was available to carve the memorial. And then later on, it was really a very detailed process. You could really work in the summer months because it got very cold in South Dakota in the wintertime. And it was a process that today would seem kind of absurd. There was no technological laser scanning, for example. There are very little environmental reports put forward beforehand about how the memorial should be carved. And so Gunther Borglum really took it on an act of faith that the memorial would appear, the sculpture would appear as he had envisioned it to. And so it was a work in progress, and still is a work in progress, as the memorial is not fully complete.
Which part of it is incomplete?
Borglum's original vision was to include the torsos of the presidents, not just the faces. And that, of course, is not the case at Mount Rushmore. And I think even more interesting to me is that if you look at the memorial, you'll see rubble at the bottom of the faces, granite boulders that were blown off the mountain by dynamite. And those were initially going to be removed, but the memorial ran out of money, so they could not remove those.
Matthew Davis, you write in your book how the land where Mount Rushmore was sacred in the beginning. It was taken by the United States. And the Lakota Nation later won a Supreme Court ruling that ordered the U.S. to pay them more than $100 million for land theft. But the Lakota continued to refuse to take that money because they say they just want their land back. How likely is that ever to happen?
I don't think it's that likely to happen. I mean, the United States would need to give that land back to the Lakota, and that encompasses a large amount of land, including all of present-day western South Dakota. I mean, there has been some discussion over what it might look like to have land that is currently owned by the federal government co-jointly stewarded with the Lakota. But I think those options are probably not the most likely scenario for what will happen to the land. I think what will happen to the land is that there will not be much change in terms of ownership. But that doesn't mean that many Lakota people don't want the land back. There is a big rallying cry amongst many in the Black Hills to have the land returned to the Lakota as it was taken illegally, as the Supreme Court said, by the United States.
By the way, you have visited Rushmore every season. Which season is your favorite to visit?
It's the fall. I love Mount Rushmore. I love the Black Hills in October when it is beautiful, the weather is perfect, the skies are blue, the air is crisp, the crowds are not as many as they are in summertime. It's a perfect time of year to be there, and it's actually in October 1st, 1925 was the first dedication of Mount Rushmore. So at that time, Gunther Borglum probably knew that he was doing this best in the fall as well.
The original vision to make Rushmore a tourist attraction and help the economy, I assume, has been quite successful in that way for South Dakota.
It has been quite successful. I mean, Doane Robinson, of course, had the initial idea. If he were alive today and recognized and understood that over 2 million people visit Mount Rushmore every year, he would have been overjoyed with that result. Those visitors generate millions of dollars for the local economy. And a lot of those visitors then go visit other towns, other memorials, other national parks that are in South Dakota. And so, Don Robinson was really quite a visionary. He had this idea to have Rushmore be a tourist attraction. It really has. You have to drive out of your way to go see Mount Rushmore. And as I said, millions of people do every year.
That's Matthew Davis. He's the author of A Biography of a Mountain, The Making and Meaning of Mount Rushmore. Matthew, thank you.
Sasha, thank you so much for having me.
Some movies are laser focused on the family market, like the Toy Story films.
To infinity and beyond!
Or the Steve Martin, John Candy comedy classic Planes, Trains, and Automobiles about two men trying to get home in time for Thanksgiving.
Do you feel this vehicle is safe for highway travel?
Yes, I do.
Now, you got no outside mirror.
No, we lost that.
You have no functioning gauges.
No, not a one.
But some families make their own movie-watching traditions and gather together to see the same films year after year, whether they're marketed as family fare or not. One holiday break, my family went to the theater to see a movie I thought was hilarious, The Full Monty.
You and guys, strippers.
Not that bad.
Yeah, it's about unemployed men trying to earn some money and get their dignity back by becoming strippers. I thought my family would love it. Turns out all the F-bombs, which I hadn't even remembered were in there, and all the male strippers weren't my mom's thing. Since then, my family has never tried to see a movie together again, but many other families do. So for this week's movie conversation, I wanted to hear what films some of my colleagues go back to year after year with their loved ones. And with me, I have NPR's Pop Culture Happy Hour host, Stephen Thompson, and All Things Considered producer, Catherine Faith. Hi to both of you.
Hello.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Before we talk about the specific films, do the two of you have the type of families who like to get together on specific occasions and watch movies together? Catherine?
Yeah, movies are a huge deal in my family. When the holidays come around, we're always getting together to sit on the couch and watch a movie or go to the movie theater. My parents actually met at a movie theater.
Oh, did they?
So they instilled in my brother and me a huge appreciation for cinema.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same. My parents used to sit me down and make me watch movies, quote unquote, for my education, which culminated at one point when I was probably about 15, and they sat me down to watch the Best Picture winner, Midnight Cowboy.
In New York, it's no rich lane with any class car buys that cowboy crap anymore. They're laughing at you on the street. Ain't nobody laughing at me on the street. Behind your back, I seen them laughing at you.
Which was, at the time, rated X. But my parents felt that it was part of my cultural education, and God love them, I wound up going into this career. So it's certainly been a big part of my life. In my own nuclear family, me and my partner, my two now college-age kids, we more likely kind of gather around to watch TV shows. We'll watch a lot of your Great Pottery Throwdown, your Great British Baking Show, a lot of kind of twee, maybe vaguely holiday-adjacent programming. But for movies, it's more likely to be something like Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which isn't necessarily holiday-focused, but I think has that kind of playful, childlike, everyone can enjoy it kind of.
I wouldn't sell my life all.
When you're crazy. You are, what am I? You're a nerd.
Yeah, and because the holidays are when families are often getting together,
left,
sometimes these
and
family
then
movie
continue
watching
straight
nights are holiday themes. National Lampoon's Christmas
Right.
Vacation,
Go straight on.
A Christmas Story, Elf. Do your families, Stephen and Catherine, have movies that fall into that holiday?
I do have my favorites, and I would say a lot of them fall into the sort of like early 2000s holiday rom-com genre. So The Holiday with Cameron Diaz.
We switch houses for 2 weeks for the holiday. She's in LA at my house, and I'm here.
People actually do that.
Bridget Jones' Diary, starring Renee Zellweger.
I'm trying to remember, did that happen over the holidays?
Yes, that was a New Year's movie. Yes, she has vowed to change her life.
Right.
I decided to take control of my life and start a diary to tell the truth about Bridget Jones.
But, the one that I come back to every year, and honestly often not during the holidays, is a really controversial choice I've learned, and that is The Family Stone.
You don't have to be nervous.
I'm not.
They're gonna love you.
So this is from 2005. This is an ensemble cast. We've got Sarah Jessica Parker, Diane Keaton, Luke Wilson. And basically the premise is a guy comes home for the holidays and he's brought his girlfriend. She's meeting her family for the first time. He wants to propose, he wants the ring, and everyone hates her.
She is a total phony. She's completely uptight. She dragged us.
And chaos ensues. And the chaos really, I think, is why so many people hate this movie. I love the chaos. I think it's really fun. I think we're seeing a lot of these stars at their best. But there's this one scene in particular that I really love. My mom and I always watch this movie together. And Luke Wilson, who plays the brother of the man who's brought home his fiancée, who's played by Sarah Jessica Parker, she's very uptight, and I think that's why the family is having a hard time connecting with her. And they're sitting across from each other in the bar, and Luke Wilson goes, "You have a freak flag, you just don't fly it." And that is a quote that my mom and I always say to each other to this day. That just is like ingrained in my brain.
I have a philosophical question. Does it change the meaning of a movie when you see it repeatedly with your family? Or does it become something deeper somehow? Maybe I'm stretching.
I mean, I think our feeling of connection to the work changes. I think in some ways, you know, I watch a lot of movies and TV shows for my job. You know, I'm the host of a pop culture podcast. I'm seeing a lot of stuff for work. But when you are kind of strictly taking in a piece of entertainment as a bonding exercise with your family, your relationship with it is going to change. The part of your brain that is critiquing everything you see, or at least I have that part of my brain where I'm critiquing everything I see that gets turned off a little bit. And so my relationship to Frozen 2...
You've seen an enchanted forest? Wait, what?
I have. Once.
Which I watch with my family surprisingly often, is totally untethered from my relationship with it as somebody who might be critiquing that film. I just love it unconditionally because I associate it with my family.
I think for me, so I'm the youngest in my family. I have an older brother. And as I said, you know, my family loves to watch movies together. And these days, most of the movies we watch together, I would call teen comedies from the 2000s.
Step Brothers?
Yeah, Step Brothers, Superbad, Anger Management, Blades of Glory, Wedding Crashers. Wedding Crashers, which is always playing on TV when I'm at my parents' house. I don't know why. It's always on TV, so that's a guarantee.
John, this is completely against the rules. We have a wedding and a reception to seal the deal. Period. There's no overtime.
At the roundabout.
No.
What about the Chang wedding 3 years ago?
So these are movies that when they came out, I was probably too young to see in theaters. My brother probably saw them, but it was uncomfortable to watch them with our parents. And then I feel like, you know, I went off to college, we sort of dipped our toes into watching these sort of rom-coms together. And now, you know, we're just adults hanging out. And so I think it's kind of fun that we can laugh together about stuff that was sort of off limits when I was a kid.
Since we're entering Thanksgiving week, could each of you send us off with one recommendation for a movie people could watch with their families over the holiday break? Stephen, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm going to say, if you're going to the theater to see movies with your family, I was surprised at how much I enjoyed Now You See Me, Now You Don't.
In the world of magic, everything that disappears reappears.
Which is the third installment in the Now You See Me movies, which are these kind of heist movies involving a team of kind of vigilante magicians. It's super silly. The lore is kind of ridiculous, but what you're seeing is these kind of elaborate Robin Hood style heists. And to me, these movies are frictionless. They're very silly. They're not highly critically acclaimed, but I feel like they're the kind of thing where if you are in a family that is, let's say, mixed in its politics, this is not a movie that is going to start any arguments. And I feel like you're going to all kind of enjoy it together. It's very PG-13. They're not particularly violent. They're not particularly profane, and they're surprisingly fun.
Yeah, you're touching on a key thing that a movie that works for a family has to cover. It has to not be too political, has to span multiple generations. Catherine, anything comes to your mind that fits that bill?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with the 2000s theme I've got going today and recommend Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh, yeah.
Film and eat all the freaking chips, Kip.
Napoleon, don't be jealous that I've been chatting online with Babe all day.
This actually may be the movie I have seen more than any other movie. I was in elementary school when this came out, and my entire family was obsessed with it. You know, it's very offbeat, it sort of defies plot and genre, and I just really feel like it's one of those perfect movies for a family that kind of but mostly it's just kind of odd, and there are weird characters. There's an epic dance scene. You've got some great 80s music. I just feel like it's such a crowd pleaser and truly one of the most quotable movies of all time.
That is NPR's Catherine Fink and Stephen Thompson. Thank you very much, and happy movie watching to all our listeners who plan to gather with their families and watch films over the holidays. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. When the road looks rough ahead and you're...
Thank you for listening to NPR today. We hope you had a wonderful weekend, and All Things Considered will be back again tomorrow.
Support for NPR comes from